so happy to be here today. I've been studying this man for 40 years. The more I know him, the more I want to be him. He's a retired general in the U.S. Army, an NCAA football and baseball player, catcher, a Major League Baseball scout, an NCAA football and baseball coach. He was a realtor for approximately 2 months. Then he became the athletic director at Kent State University. He was the athletic director at the University of Washington for 15 years, which is the longest tenure in the history of the university. And then he became the athletic director at Auburn. Colorado's Sportsman of the Year, a father, grandfather, married for 7 decades. Is that correct, Mr. Lude?
That's correct.
This man inherited a debt at the University of Washington, inflation adjusted at $4 million, and when he retired, he left $34 million in the reserves. By way of Kalamazoo, Michigan, Mr. Milo Lude. Hello, Mr. Lude.
Hello, Jimmy. It's good to be with you.
Thank you for joining us today. I left one thing out. He's also an author of Walking the Line. Now, Walking the Line, the title, I assume that you might be a Johnny Cash fan?
No.
No, you're not.
No, the interesting thing, when I wrote my book, I sent to several people a draft, a very brief draft, and a half dozen potential titles. A man by the name of Jim Shelton, who I recruited at the University of Delaware and coached, and a retired brigadier general. And I'm not a general. I was retired as a captain in the United States Marine Corps.
Okay.
But anyway, Jimmy was a retired general, and when he got that draft, he immediately called me. He said, "Coach, all of those titles suck." He says, "What you really need is this as a title, Walking the Line." He said, "You did that as a Marine Corps captain with your troops, and you were my line coach." And that's how the title of my book, Walking the Line, came about. Had nothing to do with Johnny Cash.
Nothing to do with Johnny Cash. If you don't mind, Mr. Lude, I'd like to really enjoyed your book, and I'd like to dive right into it. On page 256, you wrote, "Considering the respective contributions to society, it's hard to justify a football coach earning 3 or 4 times more than a researcher finding a vaccine to end a dreaded disease." Now, this was written in 2004, and it's become very prominent in the times we're living through right now. The University of Washington coach was, I believe he made $20 million over 5 years, Coach Peterson, and he lost 5 conference games. My lifelong friend, Jimmy Moore Jr., was let go at UCLA and received $12 million to be let go. So I guess the question is, if we could pay a scientist 9 months ago for an FDA-approved vaccine, what would we pay him? A base salary?
Well, here's my idea. At the conclusion of my book, I also said the salaries are immoral. And I believe that. I think that we are paying coaches and athletic directors now far too much, and we're going to have a major train wreck. And I've been forecasting that for intercollegiate athletics, but I didn't know that coronavirus was going to be the train wreck. But I just think the salaries are way out of line for higher education. After all, we keep selling the idea that we're in the education business, that we are working with student, and I want to emphasize the word student athletes, and with higher education and student athletes, we're way out of line in the salaries.
So with that in mind, do you have a solution?
I do. I see a major reorganization coming for intercollegiate athletics. I may be wrong, but with most of the athletic departments realizing that they're going to be millions and millions of dollars short this year and probably next year, I see as things develop, and let me shift a little bit. A few years ago, 5 major conferences, one of them the Pac-12, their commissioners got together and they used the most offensive word in the English language to justify getting together and forming the quote Power Five. And they used the word autonomy. And autonomy means I can do whatever I want, whatever I please. Mm-hmm. So as you and I know, and anybody who views this, understand, let's just take the football season. At the end of the football season, all of the games played, you add them up, there's going to be 50% wins and 50% losses. That's the way it is because we have tiebreakers now, which I never voted for either. But so I see the real strong ones, very strong ones, become cannibalistic and eating up the less strong. And with coronavirus motivating this now and the potential of bankruptcies going on, I see a major reorganization. And I predict, whether it happens or not, that it may end up that intercollegiate athletics at the upper level, the Power Five level, will be reorganized along the Ivy League model, which I think is a pretty good idea now. 5 years ago, I would have said that's a bad idea, but I think it's a good idea to save intercollegiate athletics. One last point associated with that. I also say if we're going bankrupt and the potential of losing football with the power guys eating up the less powerful cannibalistic way, I see a way of saving intercollegiate football. Now, most people, modern people, won't like what I'm going to say. I was chairman of the Football Rules Committee for 6 years, and coaching and playing a long time ago. I survived coaching and playing one platoon football, and I would suggest to save football going to the one platoon system. Then we could help save, on the basis of bankruptcy, the number of scholarships, cut the football coaching staffs way in half, travel with far less players, and end up with a very good game that we had when I was coaching and when I was playing. So the modernistic people will say to me, oh, you can't do that. The pros won't like it. Well, I don't care what the pros like. I want to save college football. That's just my thought.
So that same cut would trickle down through every sport, I would imagine, and it would probably relieve the problem of gender equality.
You're right on target with part of my thesis. Yes, it certainly helps the idea about gender equity because all throughout intercollegiate athletics, people have to do things like have 175 women rowing to make up the difference of football. And if we have, instead of 85 scholarships, 60 scholarships, and the squad reduced, well, we can certainly cut back on the number of rowers.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. I'm going to jump around a little bit.
this is a broad spectrum.
It's the first draft.
I could give a 5-hour lecture on this.
Okay. Well, I've got the time if you do, but
No.
I would like to talk a little bit more about your book. I was amazed when I read that grades 1 through 8 were in the same classroom. The first row was the first grade, the second row was the second grade, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that your father and you had the same junior high teacher.
Well, she was the same teacher, but junior high, she taught all grades. She taught from first grade through 8th grades in the one-room school, heated with a wood stove, and it was about a mile and a half from our home on a dirt road, and it wasn't an intellectual high-level experience.
And your father insisted on attending your appendix surgery, so he got scrubbed up, and he was at the makeshift hospital. Is that just because he wanted to take care of his bear cub, or wanted to make sure?
It's interesting. This is in 1936, and the general experience was, if you had surgery, and your small town doctor did everything. He was a surgeon. He was a general practitioner. He treated everything. He said to my father, "We got to take Mike's appendix out." He said, "John, do you want to watch?" And Dad says, "Yeah, I want to watch." And that's the way it was in those days.
Who was your most influential mentor? Was it Dr. Roberts or was it Coach Dave Nelson from Hillsdale?
Well, there are 3 people that I would have to say. My high school football coach, Clayton F. Litton, Dr. Windsor H. Roberts, and of course, Dave Nelson got me started. I was in his first coaching job. He got back from the Navy in 1946, and he became the coach at Hillsdale College. I got back from the Marine Corps, and I had 1 year of eligibility left, and I wanted to play both football and baseball, and I became his first captain of the team. In those years, they elected one person as a captain, and afterwards, Rena and I, one of the most gorgeous brunettes I had ever laid eyes on, I recruited her throughout the year, and we got married in 3 days after commencement in 1947. And Coach Nelson said to me, "I'd like to have you as an assistant coach." Well, I thought he was kidding. We had accepted jobs, Rena and I, at Port Huron, Michigan. She was to be a kindergarten teacher, and I, head baseball coach, assistant football coach. And we got a job immediately in the summertime on playground supervision and the recreation department. Well, just before Labor Day, the week before Labor Day, in those days, Jimmy, you couldn't start practice either in college or high school until the day after Labor Day. So we drove back to Hillsdale to see Rena's parents, and I went over to see Coach Nelson. He said, "I haven't hired a line coach, and you're the guy I want." I said, "Coach Nelson, if you're not pulling my leg, you may have just hired a coach." He said, "Well, we need to go over to President Turner's house." So we went to the president's mansion, and we went to his study, and Coach Nelson said, "Dr. Turner, I've made a decision. I want Mike Lude as my assistant coach." Dr. Turner looked at me and he said, "Mike, we don't send our graduates out and take a contract for a year without fulfilling it. I said, well, Dr. Turner, if I get the superintendent of schools to release me, how would that be? He looked down his nose at me and he said, that would be ethical. And so we rushed back to Port Huron. I talked to the superintendent. He said, if I were you at that time, I would do the same thing. He said, but Brick Fowler, the athletic director, is going to kill you. And so I went to Brick Fowler, and he used new terms to tell me what a bad guy I was. But I went back to Hillsdale, and 1947 was my first year of coaching, and I coached for Dave Nelson at Hillsdale, and in 1949, Dave became the head coach at University of Maine, and he asked Harold Westerman, the other coach, to go with him. And by the way, talking about all of these coaches, 11 assistant coaches, that was our staff. Harold Westerman coached the backfield, I coached the line, both ways, offense and defense. And so Harold and I went with him to Maine. And then in 1951, he was hired as the athletic director and head football coach at the University of Delaware. And he asked me to go with him as his first assistant. And I did. Rena and I moved there, and Cynthia had just been born. And we moved to Newark, Delaware, and I stayed there 11 years.
So you accepted the job, $2,400 a year. You didn't even ask what the salary was.
No, $2,400 at Hillsdale. But Rena, now you mentioned that word gender equity. Rena was hired at Carl Bailey School to be the kindergarten teacher there by a good friend of ours, and she got $2,500.
Interesting. Now, I know you managed to get a short honeymoon in there. You went to Chicago.
Yes.
You remember the hotel by chance, or a restaurant?
The first night we stayed in South Bend at the Oliver Hotel.
Okay, fantastic. Now,
I don't have a memory problem.
No, I know you don't. That's why I'm asking the questions, so everyone else can learn that. Do you remember the color of Grandma Minnie's 1928 Chevrolet?
If I am correct, it was kind of beige.
So that's a tough color to really, doesn't stand out.
No.
How about the name of your pony?
Tony.
Tony. Okay, so you traded in the bull, or the calf that your grandfather got you,
yes,
for a pony, and I don't think he was too happy with that.
My grandfather became my grandfather was an immigrant from Germany with no education, and a Civil War Union captain set him up in farming in Michigan, in Waukesha Township, and grandfather paid him back for that. When I was 5 years old, just finished kindergarten, grandfather and grandmother split their relationship, and he came to my father. He said, "You're the only kid of," he had two brothers and a sister, "You're the only kid that could run the farm. I want to make a business deal with you. I want you to run the farm on shares," in other words, a sharecropper. And I am going to the Kalamazoo County Hospital, which was the mental institution, and being the dairy farm director. So he was a dairy farm director there, and all Holstein cattle registered. And he gave me one birthday a registered calf, and I think I was about 9 years old. So my dad and I went to a horse sale. We farmed the farm, all of the implements with horse-drawn equipment. We didn't have tractors or anything like that. So the farm was 260 acres of hills and stones. But so he gave me the calf, and we go to a horse sale, and I see this Hackney pony, which is larger, much larger than a Shetland pony, and just a little bit smaller than a thoroughbred. And I said to my father, boy, I would like to have that horse. He said, well, you might talk to Mr. Funk, who had the sales barn, about trading your registered Holstein heifer for that pony. So I did, and Mr. Funk said, you got a deal. But my father also said, your grandpa won't like you very much. So anyway, fast forward, maybe 3 months later, Grandpa comes out to the farm and he said, I'd like to see your heifer. And I said, oh. And then I told him, and he was so furious with me. My grandfather, I never remember him smiling until the day I departed for active duty with the Marine Corps for World War II, and he was there to say goodbye, and he did smile, and he put his arm on me, and he says, Mike, I expect you to be a general.
Reminds me of Coach James. I don't think I saw him smile until I graduated.
And then that's probably true. He smiled a lot with me,
right,
in our individual relationships.
Right. You referred to the Music Man a couple times in your book. Do you have a favorite song from that movie?
Oh, I liked all of those songs.
Mine was 76 Trombones.
Mine too. I love it.
I had a feeling. For the record, Mr. Lude, this is something that I learned. I always thought that you were at Kent State during the shootings, May 4th of 1970, but you were hired in October. So they brought you in as the athletic director. Again, you said yes without asking what the pay was. But they wanted to bring in somebody, from my understanding, they wanted to bring in an athletic director that would give the students in the university something to cheer for. It was a grim time in our nation. And you brought it, and then you brought Don James, and that seemed to have been the fix, was to win some football games.
The president there, a wonderful name, Bob White, like the dove. I love the guy. He said to me, we've made 25 years of mistakes in athletics. I was the first full-time athletic director. He said, I'll back you up. You get this job done. And I said, well, here's what we will do as a major goal. We'll get that football program revved up so that the students have an opportunity to make, like you just referred to, a psychological explosion rather than protesting.
Right. Much appreciated.
And we did.
Was Dr. Sicaro, I'm sorry, was Dr. Sicaro at Kent State?
Yes.
What was his role?
He became a friend of both Don and me.
What was his role at Kent State at the time?
I can't tell you. I think he was
a professor.
Vice president. I'm not real sure.
Yeah. So just for Husky Nation to know, in 1981, Mike Lude and Mr. Lude and Don James recruited Dr. Sicaro's son, who is currently a doctor right up the hill here in Seattle, as a quarterback. And we'll get back to that in a second. Your last season as a coach at Colorado State University, your last, they summed up the season with the following 4 points in 127 seconds. A lot of close games.
Uh, 2 losses by 1 point each, and the third loss by 2 points.
Now, being an Oregonian and playing for the University of Washington, I took great pride in beating Oregon and Oregon State every single time.
Yes.
You received the game ball when you played against Kalamazoo College, or must have been a similar feeling. There's no way you're going to leave Kalamazoo and then lose to Kalamazoo.
That was my senior year, and the year I was captain for Coach Nelson, playing at Hillsdale College, and we beat Kalamazoo College, and they decided that they were going to give me the game ball.
Now, Mr. Lude, let's set the record straight. The '84 Orange Bowl team, everyone seems to think we had an option to play in the Holiday Bowl and or the Orange Bowl, and you set me straight years ago and said there was no invite to the Holiday Bowl. We had an invite from the from the Orange Bowl committee, but the thing that really stands out and the wherewithal of our athletic director, Milo Lude, how did you get the Orange Bowl committee to fly into Pullman after a loss in November?
Well, I had, through my relationship as being chairman of the postseason football committee for the NCAA, became close friends of every bowl committee. And I had developed a really close relationship with the Orange Bowl committee. And I convinced them that we were the team, if we won, that they really needed in the Orange Bowl to get a West Coast connection. And it would be an institution playing in Miami, the furthest 2 points of for intercollegiate athletics. University of Washington in Seattle, going all the way to Miami to play in the Orange Bowl. And I had no idea who it was, our opponent would be as we were pushing them. And I said, no, this is not going to be a fun place to come, but it's not a fun place for us either.
And the irony, after the Apple Cup game, we beat Washington State, and the Orange Bowl committees were most impressed with our offense. What an exciting offense.
Yes, they liked, they also liked our tailback.
We had a good tailback, which brings up another question. But matter of fact, I'm going to throw out some real quick this or that type of questions, okay?
All right. Yes or no's?
Yeah, well, yes or no's. Do you have 2 words that would sum up Isaiah Kelly and the experience you had when Isaiah came to Seattle when you were being hired? And the 2 words were actually in your book, and I'm just going to throw it out there so we can. Icebreaker.
I don't remember what I put in there.
Yeah, you called him the icebreaker. There was a little tension in the air. There were some racial issues before you got to University of Washington. And Isaiah.
Okay. Ike Kelly, I recruited him at Colorado State, and he immediately became part of our family and just a wonderful guy. He married a United flight attendant who graduated from the University of Washington. And when I was out for an interview for the job, I had an interview also with the African American committee that they put together, Central City Committee, in Sam Kelly's home on Mercer Island. And they had it set up in the town hall atmosphere, a circle with the 2 chairs for Mike and Rena. And we're there, and a knock came on the door, and Sam went to open the door, and it was Ike Kelly. His wife had heard about this and told him, and he came, and Rena rushed to him and jumped into his arms and threw her arms and legs around him, and it was the best icebreaker that it could possibly be.
And for the record,
Is that what you were referring to?
Isaiah was an African American.
Yes, sir.
I think we left that out.
He is. He's deceased now, and I went to his memorial service and spoke years ago.
Okay. Rose Bowl or Orange Bowl? Which would you prefer?
Rose Bowl or Orange Bowl? The Rose Bowl.
Okay. Husky uniform. I'm sorry.
It's the daddy of them all.
Okay, it's the granddaddy, correct. Husky uniforms, stripes on the pants or no stripes?
Stripes.
Stripes, okay. Is it true that the best looking girls were in the drama class?
I don't know.
No? Okay. Do you think, for Husky Nation, every year we voted on captains, and do you think Don James ever counted those votes?
I'm sure he did.
Okay. Lawrence McCutcheon or Joe Steele or Jock Robinson?
Well, I recruited Lawrence McCutcheon from Texas. He couldn't play varsity his freshman year. We had freshman teams then. Mm-hmm. His sophomore year, his first carry, we ran a counter play. He went 80 yards for a touchdown on the first carry. He was an absolute fantastic player. I only coached him 1 year. Jock Robinson, I was around him all the time. You just, like when you were talking to me about the Hall of Fame of the Rose Bowl and about him Hall of Fame for the Orange Bowl, there are very few guys that could say they were the most valuable player in the Rose Bowl game and the Orange Bowl game for any university.
Only one. Only one.
And Joe Steele, I love. He was our first major recruit when we got there. Dave, actually, Don James arrived at Washington a year before me.
Mm-hmm. Your favorite safety out of the state of Oregon?
I can't remember the guy's name because I always confused him with another guy. But James Aloysius, Junior Barry, Peter Idolatus, Skidwallamus, Jack Rogers.
That's the correct answer. And you were confusing me with Breno DeFeo, which is a whole nother story. If you had to choose a quarterback, would it be Hugh Millen or Dr. Paul Sicaro? The Dr. Paul Sicaro that started the Orange Bowl, of course.
I'm not going to choose either.
Okay. I met Bruce Nordstrom downtown last year at the Downtown Nordstrom, and I felt like I was meeting a true rock star. I felt like I was meeting Mick Jagger. What a tremendous guy, humble. I think he was buying himself a sweater that was on sale. And took time to say hello, and I wanted to talk to him forever, and he kind of, probably tried to get away from me, but I might have been a little too aggressive. A quick story for everybody. When I was recruited, my father handed me off to Mike Lude, Alan Stover, and Don James. I got done playing in '85 and trying to figure out which career path to take. And Mike Lude gave me a call and told me to go meet Phil Foreman. And Alan James hired me, or Alan Stover hired me at Dane Bosworth. And then about 20 years, 30 years later, I needed a little bit of help. I was going through a tough stretch, and Mr. Stover reached out to me, the same guy, and gave me a place to live for a month at his home in Edmonds. June 2nd, I had a hip replacement in Oregon, in Portland. And who do you think came down from Seattle and retrieved me and took me back to Seattle? Alan Stover.
Alan Stover.
So, I mean, the commitment that you make to your players, it's just unheard of. And I wonder, with the thousands and thousands of players, do you keep a file on them, or do you just have a good memory, or do you have favorites that you remember? Or, I mean,
I don't keep a file on them.
mm-hmm.
Some of them, their birthdays pop up to me just inadvertently,
Mm-hmm.
but I do remember so many of them.
Yeah. And another quick story, Mr. Lude, is I was interviewing a few years back with DocuSign right across the street here in downtown Seattle. And I walked into the interview, and Mr. Al-Hadaf had a handwritten letter in front of him, and he started reading it. And I had no idea. And it was from you to him, telling him to hire me. So
I did.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I wonder if you could answer this for me. The people that decide on extending the season to the playoff games, to 13 game seasons, 14 game seasons, I wonder if any of them have played football. And what I'm getting at is, after 12 games, we were hanging by a thread. We were physically beat up. And I mean, I got invited to the Japan Bowl, and I had no inclination of going. I was so beat up mentally and physically. And here these people want to extend another round of playoffs, another round of playoffs. So I'm curious, do you think they ever played football themselves?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Some coaches talk about doing all those things, but I want you to know, before they ever had a playoff, we had NCAA votes about it, and I always voted no. I just, to be honest with you, I think 12 games is more than enough. Maybe 11 would be better.
I agree. Mr. Lude, you're a very unique individual. I don't think there's anybody else like you in this world. You've inspired me to stay healthy, to stay positive, to be righteous. At 98 years old, your energy is just contagious. Do you have a secret that you go by that you could share with everyone?
Well, I don't know that it's a secret, but I can tell you that, first of all, I have a very strong faith. I believe that's important. I have evening prayers and morning prayers, and I get up every morning and I say, "Good morning, God, we're going to have a great day." So faith, I have a positive attitude, and I don't look at the world as being so bad, even at times when it is. I like to think things are going to be just fine. And finally, I work out every day. I exercise. So faith, positive attitude, and exercise, I think, is the best you can do.
Excellent. Well, I'm very fortunate to get this opportunity to thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've influenced myself and thousands of people like me. So thank you very much, Mr. Lude.
You're certainly welcome. Let's say go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Good day, sir. How are you, brother?
Eight lies lived true.
And today we're with Kurt Marsh. in Everett, Washington. Kurt, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
High school,
Yes.
All-American, All-American at the University of Washington, 2 Rose Bowls, a Sun Bowl, a Super Bowl championship with the Oakland Raiders.
Maybe I can call Mike Lude.
For the record, we are calling a 98-year-old ex-Marine one of the greatest athletic directors in the history of the University of Washington.
History of the NCAA.
History of the NCAA. We got him on speakerphone. Let's see how we do here. Mr. Mr. Lude, you're on live, okay? And I'm sitting with Kurt Marsh.
Well, hello, Kurt.
Hey, how are you, Mr. Lude? So wonderful to hear your voice.
Fine. It's good to hear your voice, young man. I call Carol James every week. I haven't missed a week since Don passed away. And the day that he was diagnosed, we were in Seattle for 3 football games, and he and I had sat together at the football game on Saturday, and he was diagnosed on Labor Day, the Monday, and 40 days later he dies. And during those 40 days, I talked to Carol James every night. I would call her before she went to bed and checked in and checked the progress and so on. I not only talked to her, but I talked to the doctors several times. But anyway, I just want you to know I understand. That's the way it's supposed to be.
That is the way it's supposed to be. That's why we, my wife's mom is living with us. You know, the people you love, you need to be there when they need us. And that's, it brought a tear to my eye listening to you talk about that. And she's fortunate that she has someone that is so committed and have a covenant, basically, that you're going to do this with her for the rest of your time.
Speaking of 99-year-old Marines, how many do you know?
Only one.
Only one. Speaking of 99-year-old Marines, how many do you know?
Only one.
Who would that be?
That would be Milo Lude.
Greatest athletic director in the history of the University of Washington.
A student athlete shall not. How many times do we hear that? We would go into the Tubby Graves room, and once a year, our athletic director, Mike Lude, would come down and read us the regulations of what we shouldn't do or should do as part of the NCAA. And so my fondest memory, not fondest, but my clearest memory of Mike Lude is him saying, like, 2,000 times in my 5 years, a student athlete shall not, right? Yeah.
So you must have been upset when the Huskies got in trouble with the NCAA, with the Billy Joe Hobart situation, because we knew daily, we were reminded daily what not to do.
Exactly. But, you know, it's just one of those gray areas, right? Taking a loan and doing that. I mean, I don't know. You've got Heisman Trophy winners down in South Carolina. I mean, in Southern California, they're thinking that all of a sudden they should get their awards back because of the new rules.
So you're saying you're only as good as your opportunities, because I'm getting the impression you never got offered $50,000.
Not even $10.
The boat is not from the University of Washington.
No, and it's not my boat. It's Kenny and Scott's boat. I'm just in charge of food and beverage.
The hell is going I thought it was your boat.
It's not my boat. It's their boat. I'm just in charge of food and beverage.
Well, let's try to call Mike Lude.
Okay, let's try to call him.
One ring. Dos. What's
James Rogers.
Mr. Lude, you're on live with the Downtown Dawgs. We're actually sailgating, and we got Don Dow, and we just wanted to call. We were talking. I asked Don. I said, "Who's the greatest athletic director in the history of the University of Washington?" And Don said,
Mike Lude, of course. Actually, I said Milo, but
and I said, "Mr. Lude's the greatest athletic director of all time." So we're really kissing up here, and we're not asking for any money. We just want to say hello.
and Mike, hey Mike, great to hear from you. But here's one of my fondest memories of you, and I think I heard this line like maybe 2,000 times in 5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. A student athlete shall not. Because how many times do we read the manual?
Yeah.
Basically, don't take anything that's not yours.
Exactly.
You guys are terrific. It's you make my day. I'm having a great day watching a lot of football.
Do you have any predictions on the Washington-Montana game, Mr. Lude?
Well, I would be terribly disappointed if the Huskies didn't have a really great game.
And no injury-free, right?
That's right. That's right. I watched Michigan, and they're pretty good.
Yep. Should be quite a battle next week. We'll probably see you there.
Well, I'm going to be there.
Okay.
Outstanding. So Mike,
The athletic director at Michigan provided me with 6 Loge tickets and special parking, and asked me to be one of the 2 honorary captains for the game.
wow, fantastic.
That's the best news I've heard in a long time, Mr. Lude. Well deserved.
Mike, Mike, will you be joining Carol anytime soon? Because of course my seats are right next to hers, but there's a rail in between us. Because I don't spend that money for the Don James Center.
My seats are right next to Carol.
Right. Well,
No, I'm not going to be there this week,
Right.
and certainly I'll be in Michigan next week.
Right.
We'll see how the weeks progress.
All
I
right.
definitely will be up for the Thanksgiving
Apple
week,
Cup. Yep.
and the Apple Cup.
Well, great. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Now, Mr. Lude, one quick question. I'm kind of shocked that they invited you back and made you honorary captain, and they got you parking and probably got a buffet and all of that after that 1984 whooping that you gave them back when Bo was coaching and Jim Harbaugh was the quarterback, right?
Right.
Okay. Nope.
The athletic director at Michigan has been a long-time friend of mine.
What's his name again, Mr. Lude?
Ward Manuel.
Okay. Well,
Fantastic.
big up to Mr. Manuel, and you have a wonderful day, Mr. Lude. We all love you very much.
All right.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the call.
Absolutely.
And Don, it's good to hear your voice.
Absolutely, Mike. Great to hear yours. Go Dogs, and thanks for everything.
All right. Go Dogs. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.